Welcome back to the NutriMedical Report. We're joined by Chris Harrison and Tim Alexander still here. Chris, let's summarize the reports of what you've posted up today on Fukushima, the WIP reactor, the seismic testing, the NRC started with Jasko before he was removed from his position. So what's the latest?
I thought I was just talking with Tim. I thought the most important article that I've read today, I think that was courtesy of John Stokes' info, was that the U.S. taxpayers looks like there's an agreement for us to shoulder the burden of cleaning up Fukushima. And I did send you that article. And
the U.S. I see that. It says U.S. taxpayers may end up paying for Fukushima disaster. Yeah, we're in the tailpipe of this mess, aren't we?
Yeah, but also, right now it's kind of late, in the game. And all of a sudden now they're going to want more money, and they're going to go ahead and squeeze the American public for it. There's supposedly an agreement. Now, I didn't dig into it and verify and confirm that there's a whole bunch of how this works and everything else. But that's the only article I read. I said, I'm appalled that now after the fact, way after the fact, when it's going to cost so much more money, when an ounce of prevention could have prevented a lot of this.
I'm going to invent a new word in the English language. I'm going to say this: I am unsurprised.
I'm unsurprised too, but I'm just going to say that
I am unsurprised. I am unbewildered. How's that? Another word.
Yeah, I'm unimpressed either by this.
Exactly.
So, guys, since we're going to be printing all these trillions of dollars, and of course they're going to be worthless pretty soon, could they just kind of ship $1 billion my way? I mean, even for 6 months or so, I could probably have a lot of fun with $1 billion. And it's just
I remember I had a friend of mine in the Hungarian Revolution that left in 1968, and he smuggled across the border. And he was pretty athletic. He was involved as a wrestler in Hungary. And he told me how the money became so valueless, just like the Weimar Republic of Germany, that they would wallpaper their outhouses because it was high-quality paper for the money, but it was worthless for anything other than that. And, of course, the colors were so bizarre, you'd only wallpaper their outhouses. You wouldn't put it in your house unless you had a really poor sense of taste. High-quality paper, but bad design.
I'm not going to touch that. No way.
I don't know. So
it's unfair. I mean, you're looking at somebody making an agreement on my behalf, and I'm not agreeing to pay for all this. Now they know that they know who's boss, I guess, or they want us to think that that's the way. And sure, we'll just we'll usurp some of their funding and go ahead and use it to do the other work that needs to be done. So, like I said, I'm appalled by it. Anyway, I know you're unsurprised.
Yeah. Let's go through all the news. It says TV trouble reported near ice wall. Now, last week we got on E&E News again. Tell us what E&E News said out of our report on the ice wall, because I mentioned about the idea of using Starlight, which is a compound that was invented in the 70s, could tolerate 16,000 degrees. They could make pylons and divert the water away from above the site, but you don't want to put anything near Fukushima Daiichi. The only thing you want to do is build a seawall below and then pump that water below that's landing up underneath there, going through the groundwater, actually through the seafloor, and get it because it bubbles up for these steam jets, tritiated steam jets. And you want to take that water and then filter it with a proper system, not the Alps system that's useless. And by the way, the same people that designed the Alps, and you found this out,
right.
Chris.
Yeah.
The same people. I mean, this is like SNL, Saturday Night Live. The same people were involved with making the kitty litter decision to make green kitty litter, divided by the crazy green idiots at the Department of Energy. So they have green kitty litter that turns these waste containers at sites like the WIP reactor site in Carlsbad, but also at Hanford and possibly other sites. We don't know because they won't. It's really hard to dig around and find out just how bad these idiots spread this. But they turn them into bombs. And we found also that the criticality of having a hydrogen explosion can cause the plutonium to cause a critical reaction in a nuclear explosion. So if one, say, of 20 or 30 of these containers blows, it's going to cause possibly a nuclear explosion. It'll blow the heck out of the rest of them. It's not surprising WIP blew up. It's only a matter of time before Hanford and other sites blow up, too.
Yeah,
So
that's
what-
and also, I guess one other report on there was it's unverified on my end of it, but he doubts that the waste stored in that pod was the low level waste. It was more, well, from judging from where he's sitting now, if it's higher level waste and maybe fissionable products, we got a big problem. Just like we talked about before. I guess
Exactly.
CNE news. Getting back to that was cited our discussion of last week was concerning one of my colleagues who I relayed what he pretty much told me to, and he curled his lip at the thought of using an ice wall. And right now, it's almost like a self-limiting problem. Like they cannot form an ice plug at this point, which means, you've got to think it's a real Goliath task trying to freeze a great big section of the
Well,
Earth.
it's apparently 1.4 kilometers long. It's not like a little one around as say an old slag, we call slag from a coal mine, which is usually a very temporary procedure. This is something they want to do long term. Plus, it'll increase the water level, make the soil and the land around it thixotropic, cause more subsidence, more likely the buildings will just fall over, increases the structural stresses on the buildings. I just think it's beyond insane. It's like the people who are doing this must have radiation cerebritis. Their brains are on fire with nuclear isotopes and radiation-induced astrocyte sickness. So God knows.
Yeah, so, they're going to need more. Let's put it this way. If they want this to be successful, it's not powerful enough. In other words, they can't remove enough heat to stop the flowing water and then turn it into a solid, by freezing it. It's not going to work. And then even if it does form a freeze plug, well then, on the other hand, you'll get, just like you said, sinkholes and the thixotropic soil and all the other problems that would create.
Right. So in Unit 4, they removed 1,078 fuel rod assemblies. So they're proceeding, but they're getting into more difficult ones. And you mentioned also here in your report that they're the common cooling pool. They're moving now to Unit 6. You can remember, Unit 5 and 6 reactors were still intact, but they turned them off. 5 and 6, there were 6 reactors there. Including, by the way, reactor that was a MOX reactor, reactor 3, that was actually making plutonium pellets for nuclear detonators. It was an illegal nuclear weapons generation plutonium pellet, which is basically detonators for nuclear weapons facility. The other thing that's going on, I remember taking care of a gentleman by the name of Fairleigh Mowat, and he wrote a book many years ago called Sea of Slaughter. And it was about the abnormal draggers and the abnormal fishing practices in the North Atlantic that destroyed the fisheries, which caused the fisheries to collapse. But what we now have is a collapse of life forms, and there's a number of articles over at Rense.com, because Rense has probably done more work than anybody in collecting articles on all these different things. I'm one step away, by the way, from having my site up as the gamma radiation testing site for Vista, California, which will measure 7 miles in North County, San Diego, just below Pendleton Marine Corps Base at around 1,100 feet elevation, because we're up on the side of a mountain 7 miles in. There's mountains around here, blue granite mountains. Second hardest rock, by the way, in the world. The second hardest is in Scotland. And it'll measure gamma. It's not going to measure the others. It'll just measure gamma. But gamma is what you want. And it'll measure gamma because it's very important to monitor things like cesium. Cesium is a big bad boy. It will not measure strontium because it's a beta emitter. And unless you get a lot of it, you're not going to pick up beta emitters unless you bring it right over by the... But gamma will go right to the front screen of this device. If your count's going up in gamma, it means you're getting a surge of real nasty radioisotopes. Plutonium, which is a gamma emitter, cesium-137. These are nasty, nasty. Gold concentrates in glands, causes cardiac arrhythmias, destroys brain tissue, all the glands in your body. Nasty stuff. Back in a moment. Welcome back. I'll be on the second hour as a guest tonight on Rense Network. I'm every Thursday night, usually second hour. Sometimes on the second week, I'm in the third hour. And we always spend quite a bit of time on Fukushima, on the WIP reactor, and on the NRC report by JASCO that started to look at seismic reports and the danger of loss of control of the corium and in the reactor core of nuclear reactors in America because of extreme weather, but especially seismic events. Checking the structural integrity of the reactors to be able to withstand these. And so far, they're burying it with studies on studies. Any new news on what's happening from JASCO's initiated process? Is there anything at all coming out to tell us which reactors have failed the test? Because I know you had one you posted up on the site, Chris, that looked like it was not doing so good. We had another report of one of the reactor sites that's having troubles.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about this.
I think it was a Calhoun, right? They sandbags being
that's
filled.
Exactly the one. I was expecting you to hone right in on that.
Yeah, for
I was
Calhoun.
surprised to see that. And that's the plant that a couple of years ago in 2011 was shut down for 2 years. And then now it's running again, and it looks like the flood waters are rising in the Missouri River and a couple of the other tributaries.
Yeah, some of these aren't even like sites of nuclear reactions that are in danger of seismic, and it's just because the floodplain is higher than even the diesel generators to back up the power. It's stupid design in where they put them. And they're designed to be in tornado zones, or the flood water line is literally above the intake of the diesel generator, so it's going to flood them and they're going to turn off.
They are sandbagging preemptively right now. So they're actually building sandbag walls. And I showed you that video. That was courtesy simplyinfo.org. And so, and it was, like I said.
How many of the big question is, how many reactors have failed the test in terms of seismic testing, which they're supposed to have all the data out by now? It's a couple months. Which reactors failed?
Well, the ones that I've seen, they all had something to do. So they all failed, in my opinion. In other words, all
the reactors like Diablo Canyon in California, all the reactors sitting near the New Madrid fault system, and there's fault lines all over America. It turns out that many of the reactors are on coastal areas or on rivers. There's, I would say, just as a ballpark, half of the reactors in America are sitting near a fault zone where they can be struck. Half. And a number of other ones are in additional extreme weather, or they're literally designed below the high water mark so the water can flood out the diesel generator so there's no backup power.
Guys, you realize if we do get into, if not tomorrow, 5 years down the road, whenever, God knows I don't, World War III, what's going to happen if you have EMP weapons going off, so you lose your grids all over the country? You have bio-war, you have radiation from atomic blast. You're not going to be able to service all these reactors.
Well, even if you could get giant
Fukushimas everywhere.
Exactly. Even if you could service them by flying in giant heavy lift helicopters, diesel fuel. Number one, the diesel generators have to be working, which they tend to fail. And number two, you have to be able to continuously get that material in. If the freeways are jammed up, because cars have been hit by EMP, so the freeways are all gone, you have to fly it with heavy lift helicopters. You have to have an attack military that can actually do that. Can they appropriate the military forces and heavy lift helicopters to actually service these reactors? Because we can have an entire rash of reactors, even if they're not physically, structurally destroyed, that they lose their backup power that'll eventually go Fukushima. So I think we're literally sitting on, it's like, say, let's put it this way, it's like having grenades underneath the cushions of your living room chairs while you're watching movies, and someone moves the wrong way and the pin slides up.
Whoops.
Mm-hmm. It's like, whoops. That's not wise. So, Chris, that's that issue. The other thing is what's happening at WIP and at Hanford. Anything new there?
I don't have much new information other than what we discussed before. That one scientist who claims that maybe the level of waste that's stored in those drums, especially that exploded, is actually high level waste instead of low level waste. So
right.
High
level means
it's fissionable. Or fissionable material that
right, americium, plutonium. In other words, these are gamma emitters that can induce a critical reaction. They can actually create a critical reaction in a nuclear explosion. The gamma emitters are neutron emitters, right?
No, gamma is the neutron emitters are. Oh boy, I got to go back to my isotopic on this one. There are some that are neutron emitters just spontaneously, and they would decay and give off a neutron, and then they would interact with the fissionable material potentially. But I don't know that that's happening. But I do believe the part about it being a hydrogen explosion due to the decomposition of a green kitty litter. But that causes a whole bunch of problems, and one of them is that it's a huge dirty bomb.
I want to revisit this question again, and we talked about it before. We now have a war where Iran is getting in to try to protect the holy sites in eastern Iraq. Strange bedfellows were actually allies with Iran, trying to stop the ISIS from not only destroying the Iraqi government.
Not really. That's the image.
That's
the reality is ISIS is funded by us and controlled and armed by us.
Here's the danger. The Israelis, because we gave them long-range tanker bombers and other equipment, including the GB-54 long-range deep bunker buster nukes, they plan on hitting the Bashar reactor and deep centrifuge sites like the Qum Mountain, the Holy Mountain in Iran, these other sites. We could have massive clouds of radiation if they strike the Bashar reactor. How bad would it be if they actually hit with high explosives or nukes the Bashar reactor? What would happen?
Well, it depends on where they hit. No, I mean, at the very least, it would remove the ability for them to cool the core, and then you have a problem.
I'm talking about the core completely gone. I'm talking about vaporize the entire site, turned to an atomic vapor.
You mean aerosolize?
Aerosolized. Bashar is now aerosolized. It is now no longer a physical structure. It is now between here and the cosmos.
Well, I'll tell you what. That would be the worst possible case, because there would be no way to attenuate or temper that.
There would be a fume of death that would stretch to China.
Right. Well, our physicians for social responsibility have calculated that if that happened, that the amount of radiation would spread across Myanmar, because it's directly downwind. It would go across southern China, which is the primary dragon cities that make all the industrial work, not North China. It would cross South Korea, Japan, and would head directly toward America. We'd have a giant plume of radiation on top of Fukushima heading toward us. So these morons don't understand. If you start a nuclear war there, and again, it won't just be a one-way deal. Russia is going to use nukes too. They'll nuke Israel. They'll nuke some of these other Islamic cities like Saudi Arabia. In fact, the dialogue going between Mr. Putin, who they now call Tsar Putin, which I think is ridiculous, and the king of Saudi Arabia, is he told them that he would nuke Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, after the nasty comments by the king of Saudi Arabia against Russia. Saudi Arabia was threatening Russia, and that's not a wise thing to do. These are people you don't mess with. So they're not being treated with respect, and again, we need to treat them with respect. They want to make a business deal. They want to be treated with respect, and instead of treating them like, again, in a Christian way, strength but verify, whether it's nuclear weapons or other things, we could, out of strength, have a deal with the Russians and the Chinese, stop industrial espionage, properly set up tariffs to protect our industry, at the same time help to build up their countries and have some interlocking exchange systems so we don't have massive debt blow our world economy to pieces. But all the pieces are in place to blow it apart this fall, for this summer or fall to have a big war in the Middle East.
Dr. Bill, you're totally right. The